Tyler said it first, but they both laughed. "You're just a placeholder until Mom does better," said it in front of his friends. Backyard. Bluetooth speaker playing some auto-tuned garbage. Their empty soda cans sweating in the grass. I had just come out with a replacement HDMI cable for their basement setup, an errand I ran between work and cooking dinner. Heard it before I reached the door. They didn't lower their voices, didn't flinch, didn't expect me to hear, or maybe they hoped I would. I didn't say a word. I stood there for a few seconds longer than I should have. Then I turned around, went back inside, and dropped the cable on the counter like it was nothing. That's how it starts. Not with a fight. Not with yelling or accusations. Just silence. A silence that feels heavier than any scream. You don't answer a truth like that. You carry it. They'd finally said it out loud. The thing I'd always suspected, the rot under the floorboards. What I called a family, what I fed, paid for, lost sleep over, only existed as long as I was convenient. Replaceable. A stand-in. And here's the worst part. They weren't even angry when they said it. That would have meant it came from pain, from something twisted but human. No, it was casual. A throwaway line. Like commenting on the weather. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a reveal. I sat at the dining table that night and watched them eat the dinner I made. Megan didn't mention it. Tyler didn't look at me. Noah mumbled about wanting new earbuds. Megan said maybe we'd check Amazon later. It was surreal. Like watching people perform a play where I was just the set. My name is Daniel. I'm 44 years old. I work in systems infrastructure, not glamorous but stable. I met Megan when I was 35. She was a single mom with 2 boys. Recently divorced from a man who disappeared more often than he showed up. First dates were polite but guarded. She mentioned the boys early. Said they were her world. I said I respected that. Because I did. I wasn't looking to be anyone's father. I wasn't trying to earn a title. I just thought maybe if I showed up, did the work, stayed consistent, maybe that would be enough. Maybe presence would matter more than blood. At first, it seemed like it did. Noah was 8 when I moved in. Tyler was 10. They didn't say much, but they were kids. I didn't expect warmth overnight. I started small. Helping with homework, building a Lego set, fixing a leaky faucet. Megan always said, "Thank you, babe. You didn't have to," with a tired smile, and I always said, "I know." Because that's what you do when you care. Year by year, the responsibilities grew. I paid for school supplies, covered field trip fees, signed them up for sports. When their dad missed Christmas, 3 years in a row, I doubled down. I never said a bad word about him. Never wanted to be the guy who badmouths the ex. I figured the kids would see the difference eventually. Actions versus excuses. But eventually never came. Instead, something colder settled in. It started with small things. Conversations that paused when I entered the room. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Meals where they talked over me like I was a waiter clearing the dishes. They stopped asking. They started expecting. A new phone? That's what I was for. Clothes? Dad never pays child support, so can you handle it? Dentist appointments, sports gear, Netflix subscriptions, cracked laptop screens, all routed through me like I was a bank with a soul. Megan noticed, but she always waved it off. They're just kids, Daniel. Teenagers. They'll come around. And I believed her, or wanted to. But love without acknowledgement is rot. It looks like something alive. You can build a whole house on it. Until one day the beams snap. That day came with Tyler's voice, floating through the back door, laughing about how I was just a placeholder. A bench warmer in his mom's life. And I saw it clearly, finally, how they had never truly let me in. Not really. They used my presence. Lived in the comfort I built. But emotionally, I was always outside the circle. Their real dad could disappear for months, break promises, forget birthdays, and they'd still speak about him with some misplaced loyalty. Some ache I couldn't compete with. I was the one here, at the dinner table, in the car, late at night, when Noah had a fever and Megan was crying because the clinic bill was more than she expected. I was here, but I was never his. And that's the curse of the stepfather. You get all the responsibility, none of the credit. You carry the load but never wear the badge. You pour yourself into a foundation they don't even look at. And the moment you ask for acknowledgement, you're told you're making it about you. I remember the first time I told Megan I felt invisible. It was last year. I had just spent 5 hours fixing a sump pump to keep the basement from flooding. She came down, saw me covered in mud, and said, "You really didn't have to do all that." And I snapped. Not loud, just tired. I know I didn't have to. I wanted to. But it'd be nice if someone said thank you. Or even noticed. She looked hurt, like I'd wounded her. "I notice," she said. But the way she said it, it was like she was trying to convince herself. I didn't bring it up again. Because that's the other curse. You don't get to vent. You don't get to say, "This is hard." You're the outsider. If you complain, you're the villain. You're the one who knew what you were getting into. You signed up for this. So shut up and keep signing the checks. But I didn't sign up to be disposable. I didn't sign up to raise boys who would mock me to their friends like I was a stand-in janitor. I didn't sign up for a partner who would let them do it. After that night, something broke in me. Or maybe it finally settled. Like a tooth that had been loose for years, aching with every bite. And now it was just gone. A clean space where pain used to be. I stopped offering help before it was asked. Stopped reminding Megan about bills. Stopped checking the thermostat when the weather changed. Let things run on autopilot, just to see how long it would take for anyone to notice I had stopped steering. They didn't. Noah left his dishes in the sink for 3 days. Tyler asked where the PS5 controller was and walked away before I could answer. Megan complained about the leaky faucet again and muttered, "Guess I'll call someone." Like it hadn't been me fixing this house inch by inch for nearly a decade. I watched. I waited. I said nothing. Because the truth had already been said. Out loud. In the sun. With soda cans in the grass. You're just a placeholder until Mom does better. And now I'm counting receipts. Not just the ones with dollar signs. The emotional ones. The nights I stayed up when Noah was sick. The conversations I had with Tyler about girls and grades and growing up. The weekends I lost patching drywall or repainting the living room while they played video games in the next room. Never asking if I needed help. The birthdays. The Christmases. The quiet days when I thought, this is working, even if no one said so. All those receipts. Spread out in my mind. Unpaid. Unacknowledged. But not forgotten. The sentence Tyler said didn't echo. It stayed. Like mold. Once you see it, you start spotting it everywhere. Behind the paint. Under the trim. In the soft parts of the house that rot silently, out of sight. That week, I started noticing what I had always excused. I'd come home from work, tired, eyes burning from staring at server logs, and find Megan on the couch scrolling her phone, while the boys hovered upstairs, music leaking from under the doors. Dinner wasn't made. No one asked how my day was. When I sat down, conversation stopped, sometimes mid-sentence, as if the very sound of me breathing disrupted the script. I tried saying things. Not complaints, just presence. Rough day. Client pushed an impossible timeline. Megan smiled without looking up. MHM. That was the whole reply. I tested it. Purposely mentioned something absurd. I think my boss is having an affair with the vending machine. Still, MHM. I still glued to the feed. That's when I understood. I was background noise. The hum of the refrigerator. The whir of the ceiling fan. Necessary, but unnoticed. It didn't stop there. I checked our joint account one night. Noticed an $89 charge from a gaming site. Tyler. Then another, Uber Eats for wings and fries. Noah. No, hey. Is it cool if I use the card? No text. No thanks. Just withdrawal after withdrawal, like the account had no owner. Like money appeared magically, pulled from some impersonal ether. I confronted Megan. Quietly. Calmly. Did you give the boys access to the joint card? She looked confused for half a second, like I was asking if the sky was still blue, then shrugged. I might have. Noah needed to buy something for school. $89 for school? Another shrug. They're kids, Daniel. Don't make it a thing. That's what she said. Don't make it a thing. And there it was again, the quiet betrayal. Not a fight, not a scream, just dismissal. Dismissal from the person who was supposed to have my back. It wasn't about the money. God knows I've poured tens of thousands into that household over the years. Clothes, sports, college savings, braces, food, insurance, internet, even the goddamn Disney Plus subscription, all me. But this wasn't about bills. This was about being used. Not asked. Not included. Used. Decisions were made without me, but paid for by me. And Megan never once said, "That's not okay." I watched her laugh at their jokes. Heard her defend them to her sister over the phone. "Tyler's so smart, he's just misunderstood. Noah's doing great in science, thanks to all the extra support we've been giving him." As if I had a seat at that table. As if I was part of the decision-making that put them in new clothes while I was still wearing shirts from 3 years ago. There's a kind of clarity that only comes from quiet. Not rage. Not drama. Just a cold, still space where you can finally see what's been true all along. So I made a decision. No fight. No confrontation. Just action. I opened my laptop that Friday after work. Logged into every account that made their lives easier. I took my name off the autopay for utilities. Disconnected the joint account from Amazon. Canceled my card on Uber Eats. Logged into the education fund and rerouted the contributions to a private account under my name. Then I emailed our insurance agent. Removed the boys as dependents from my health coverage. They weren't mine. Not legally, not emotionally, not practically. It was time the system reflected that. Then the big one, the mortgage. We'd refinanced last year right before rates climbed. I paid the down payment, $60,000 pulled from the savings I'd built before I met Megan. She always said we'd pay it back together. That never happened. I called the bank. Asked what it would take to pull out of the co-signed liability. They said it was messy, complicated, but not impossible. I started the paperwork. I wasn't angry. I was precise, calm, unflinching, like a surgeon cutting away dead tissue. By Monday, I had a furnished apartment across town. Month-to-month lease. Utilities included. No one else's names on anything. I told Megan over breakfast. I made pancakes. The kind Noah likes, chocolate chip, slightly burnt edges. I set the table. Poured coffee. Sat across from her. "I'm moving out," I said. She blinked. "What?" "I've got an apartment. It's done. I'll be gone by the weekend." The boys weren't there. Off at school or still asleep. Doesn't matter. The house was quiet when I said it. Like it had been waiting for that sentence for years. Megan's voice cracked. "Where is this coming from?" I tilted my head. "You know where." "No, I don't." "Is this about the money?" I laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just sad. "No, Megan. It's about being invisible in the house I pay for. It's about being mocked by your sons while you say nothing. It's about decisions being made without me, but bills showing up with my name on them. They're kids. They're 16 and 18. Old enough to call me a placeholder in front of their friends. Old enough to use my money and spit on my presents. And you let it happen." She didn't argue. That was the worst part. No defense. No denial. Just silence. I finished my coffee, stood up, and said the last thing I needed to say. "I'll cover things until the end of the month. After that, you'll live in the version of reality you've chosen." And then I walked out. No shouting. No slamming doors. Just the slow, deliberate sound of a man stepping away from the edge he'd stood on for nearly a decade. They didn't see it coming. That's the part one still can't get over. After all their jokes, their dismissals, their quiet contempt, they never actually believed I'd leave. Because I was always there. Always cleaning up, always paying, always driving them to practice or fixing the plumbing they refused to notice. I was the ghost that did the work. The engine under the floor. But when the engine stopped, the house got quiet. The apartment was small. 2 rooms, 1 bath, old linoleum floors. But it was mine. No teenagers slamming doors. No half-finished dishes in the sink. No Megan scrolling while I fixed the dryer for the 3rd time that month. I slept better than I had in years. The first week passed without a word. Then the text started. Megan, hey, the Wi-Fi isn't working. Did you change something? Tyler, where's the Netflix login? Noah, my debit card got declined? I didn't answer any of them. Because here's the thing about withdrawal. It teaches faster than generosity ever does. By the second week, the tone changed. Megan, we need to talk. I didn't know you were this cold. Tyler, can you at least send my tuition deposit? I have deadlines. Noah, why are you doing this to us? Still no response. Because I wasn't doing anything to them. I had simply stopped pretending this was a family. It didn't take long for the consequences to find them. By the time the calendar flipped to the first of the next month, the cracks became craters. The kind you don't just trip on, the kind you fall into and vanish. First, it was the car insurance. Tyler called me while I was in line at the pharmacy. Hey, my policy lapsed or something. They said the payment didn't go through. I have work this weekend. Can you fix it? I listened to him stumble through the request, like he was chewing gravel just to form the words. That was the first time he'd called me directly since I moved out. I didn't yell. I didn't sigh. I just answered honestly. I canceled it. It was in my name. You're not my son. You said that clearly. Silence. Then a click. Didn't even say goodbye. I knew what came next without needing to see it. The scramble behind the scenes. Megan calling her ex. The man who showed up every few birthdays with a smirk and a new reason for why he couldn't stay. The biological father who always managed to be a story, never a solution. I imagined the call going like this. Hey, the insurance is gone. What do you mean it's gone? Daniel stopped paying. Well, I don't have, listen, I'll see what I can do. Click. See, here's the thing they never understood. I wasn't just the man paying bills. I was the scaffolding they leaned on, the silent structure behind every convenience they mistook for default. When I stepped away, they weren't left with nothing. They were left with him, and he was nothing. Noah texted me next. 3 words. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a while, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what he wanted. He wasn't reaching out for me. He was reaching for the life I had built around him, the one he didn't know how to rebuild on his own. I agreed to meet him. Public place. Neutral ground. A diner on the edge of town. The kind of place with chipped mugs and waitresses who call you Han. Even when you look like hell. Noah showed up late. Hoodie up. Eyes rimmed red. He looked like he hadn't slept. Sat across from me, didn't order anything. Just stared at the table for a full minute before speaking. I didn't mean what I said. That day. When Tyler. I didn't help him finish the sentence. Let him twist in it. I mean, it was a joke. A stupid one. Still, I said nothing. I know you were there. I know you heard it. I nodded. Just once. I did. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry. That word, sorry. It hit softer than I expected. Maybe because it came alone. Not stapled to a request. Not bartered. I let it sit between us. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Do you know why it hurt? He looked up, surprised by the calmness in my voice. Because it was mean? No. Because it was true. His brow furrowed. But I just said. I held up a hand. Noah, you can't walk back a truth just because it finally cost you something. I was a placeholder. I see that now. I was the man who filled the gaps while your father vanished. And while your mother stayed silent. He looked like he'd been slapped. I leaned back in the booth. I raised you. Not biologically. But I was there. I taught you how to change a tire. I sat through 3-hour school plays. I worked double shifts so you could have the same cleats your friends wore. His voice cracked. I know. Do you? I asked. Because if you did, you wouldn't have stood there while Tyler said what he did. You wouldn't have laughed. Noah didn't cry. Not really. But something changed in his face. Like something old had cracked and finally let the light in. I don't want money, he said. I wanted to say I was wrong. And maybe that's why I didn't walk out. Maybe that's why I nodded and told him I appreciated it. because it was the first time anyone in that house said I was wrong. But I didn't go back. I didn't offer to reconnect the autopays. I didn't slide the debit card across the table. I left the booth and paid for my own coffee. Walked out alone. That was the new rule. No expectations. No illusions. A few days later, Tyler called. Not Megan, Tyler. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, I expected the usual blame, guilt, deflection. But what I heard was different. I didn't think you'd really leave, he said. His voice was quieter. I thought you'd get over it. You always did. Then, I don't know what to do now. I didn't reply. Not right away. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed to know that voice was real. Not just another mask. Not just another manipulation to reset the house back to when I was invisible but useful. I waited 2 weeks. Then I called him. We spoke like strangers. Stilted. Polite. Unfamiliar. But honest. I told him what I'd told Noah. There would be no return to the old arrangement. If he wanted a relationship, it would be personal, not transactional. Built on respect, not obligation. He said he understood. I said we'd see. Meanwhile, Megan stayed silent. No texts. No calls. Not even a forwarded bill. I think she knew better. Knew that if she tried to guilt me, it would only harden what had already calcified between us. By the end of the 3rd month, she sent a single message. I've spoken to a lawyer. I'll have the paperwork soon. That was it. No apology. No reflection. Just the end. But it wasn't really the end. It was just the final piece of truth catching up to reality. I had been the man who stayed when their father left. I had been the one who kept the lights on, the fridge full, the heat running. And for years, I convinced myself that would be enough. That the currency of effort would eventually buy me a place at the table. But respect isn't earned through suffering. It's given through choice. When convenience disappeared, they didn't miss me. They missed the ease I provided. But now, if they wanted me, the man, not the function, they'd have to come without a hand outstretched. They'd have to show up the way I always did. And for once, they'd have to bring something other than need. The divorce didn't end with shouting. No lawyers in expensive suits, no courtroom drama. Just a few emails, notarized signatures, and one last quiet conversation at the kitchen table where it all began. Megan sat across from me. She wore that same hoodie she always reached for when she felt exposed. I didn't bring anger to the table. I brought silence, the kind that follows a fire after everything's turned to ash. She slid the folder toward me. You'll find everything's clean. No surprises. That line, no surprises, hit harder than it should have. Because that's exactly what our marriage had become in the end. Predictable. Transactional. Dry. I had become the structure, the scaffolding. And no one misses the scaffolding until the building starts to crack. I nodded. Didn't thank her. Didn't need to. When I walked out of that house for the last time, the boys were both home. Noah opened the door. He didn't speak. Just stood there, eyes tired, arms crossed like he was bracing for weather. I looked at him. Really looked. This boy, now almost a man, had watched me carry his family like a mule, had watched his mother excuse his brother's contempt, had eaten meals I cooked, slept in a house I kept upright, and laughed the day I became too familiar. I didn't say goodbye, because goodbyes are for people who held you in their arms, not for people who held out their hands. Tyler didn't come to the door, but I heard him, upstairs. A thud, a shift, the quiet theater of someone who wants to be seen sulking, but not seen enough to be accountable. Fine. He was never the type to look you in the eye when he knew you saw the truth. By the time I reached my apartment, the sky was turning that deep indigo, the kind of color that only shows up when the day's done pretending. I poured myself a drink, sat on the small balcony, listened to the hum of the traffic a few streets over. No music, no television, just the quiet of a life unshared. I'd spent 9 years stitching myself into a fabric that never wanted my thread. Now, for the first time, I wasn't unraveling. I was just out. The first weeks were strange. No schedules dictated by their school events. No late-night drives to pick someone up from a party. No grocery lists with snacks I didn't eat. No bills that weren't mine. No reminders stuck to the fridge in a handwriting that wasn't Megan's or mine. I didn't miss them, and that terrified me, because I thought I would. I thought I'd feel the hollow space where they used to be, where their noise used to live. But what I felt instead was relief. A slow, spreading warmth in the chest. Peace. No one demanding, "Did you pay for that already?" No one saying, "Can you fix the Wi-Fi again?" No one assuming my time, my wallet, my energy belonged to them. I started walking in the mornings. I started eating alone without rushing. I read books I'd bought years ago. I got a new car, something modest, paid in full. No more second-row seats. No more trunk space for sports gear I didn't use. I got my name off the mortgage. Finalized the title. Walked away with less than I put in, but more than I'd had in years. Because for the first time, my peace wasn't mortgaged to someone else's comfort. People asked about Megan. Some coworkers. One or two friends who had stuck around after my life got absorbed into hers. I kept it short. Didn't work out. They'd nod. Sometimes offer that useless cliché. "At least you tried." Yeah, I tried. Tried until trying became the same as losing myself. And in the quiet, things started to make sense. Not just the breakup, the whole history, like how Megan never corrected the boys when they mocked me, like how she called them her sons, even when talking to me, like how every sacrifice was expected, but every emotion I had about it was inconvenient. I used to think I was building a life, something permanent, durable, something that would outlast the early friction, the teenage years, the silence at dinner. But I was never building a family. I was building a service. And when I stopped providing it, they canceled the subscription. One night, around month 4, Noah called again. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for help. He asked if he could meet for lunch. I agreed. He was different this time. Wore a button-down shirt. Haircut. Posture straightened. Still awkward, but intentional. Like he wanted to be seen. We ate in silence for a while. Then he said it. "You were more of a father than he ever was." I let him speak. "He came back around," he continued. "For a bit. Said he'd step up. Made promises. I didn't ask what happened. Didn't need to. He flaked. Again. And again." I nodded. "That's who he is." He looked up, eyes full of something heavier than just regret. "Why didn't you ever say anything bad about him?" "Because I wanted you to come to the truth on your own." He didn't respond to that. Just stared down at his plate like he was trying to make sense of all the years that had passed. Eventually, he asked the question I'd expected. "Do you hate us?" I thought about that longer than I expected. "No," I said finally. "But I don't trust you." He winced. "Not in offense. In agreement." "I miss the things we used to do," he said. "Fixing stuff. Talking. You showing me how to do taxes, that kind of stuff." "That was never about obligation," I told him. "I did that because I wanted you to have a life, not just survive it." He nodded slowly. "I didn't get that back then." "No," I said. "You didn't." He paid for lunch. I let him. It wasn't a transaction. It was something else. A gesture that said, "I know I took too much. Let me give something even if it's late." I didn't call him after that. He didn't text me either. But a month later, I got a card in the mail. No name on the outside. Just my address, written in his handwriting. Inside, a short note. "I don't expect anything from you, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. As a man. Not a son. Not a debtor. Just someone who finally sees what you were." No return address. No number. Just those words. I keep the card on my desk. Not because it's sentimental, but because it reminds me of the cost of seeing clearly. Tyler never reached out again. Megan sent one final email, months after the divorce finalized. "I didn't know how much you held up until you let go. I'm sorry for my silence. I see it now." I didn't reply. Some debts can't be paid. Some silences can't be filled. And some truths are too late to matter. So now I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with no ghosts. I wake up without resentment, go to bed without dread. The only noise is the one I allow. And when people ask if I'd ever remarry, if I'd ever try again with someone who has children, I smile. Not bitter, not cruel, just clean. No, I say. Once was enough. Because once you've given everything to a house that never saw you, you learn to keep something for yourself. So I leave you with this. What would you have done? If your name was only spoken when something broke, if your money was welcome but your voice ignored, if your effort was expected but your presence was treated like an afterthought, would you have stayed? Would you have carried them one more year? Or would you have finally done what I did? Stepped back and let the silence speak for you? Because sometimes silence is the only thing they hear. And sometimes it's the only thing that saves you. So I ask you, whoever's listening, was I wrong? Or was I just the only one finally telling the truth?